All right, let's talk about Web3. You've probably heard the term thrown around a lot, right? It's been hyped up as this massive, revolutionary next step for the internet. But it's also one of the most controversial and, honestly, misunderstood ideas in tech today. So what is it really? A democratic dream for the future? Or just a whole lot of hype, a solution looking for a problem?
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll figure out what Web3 even means by looking at how the internet has evolved. Then, we're going to dive into that utopian promise. You know, the big sales pitch. After that, we got to face a harsh reality check and look at the problems. But it's not all bad, so we'll check out some real-world applications where this stuff is actually being tested. And finally, we'll ask the big question. What happens next?
Okay, to really get where we might be going, you have to see where we've been. It started with Web 1 back in the 90s. That was the read-only web. You know, static pages. You just looked at stuff. Then came Web 2, which is the internet we all live in today. It's social, it's interactive, we can read and write. We make the content, but it's all controlled by a few massive platforms. The whole vision for Web 3 is that next logical step. A read, write, own web, where we don't just create things, we actually own our data and our digital stuff.
So what's the big idea here? What's the dream? Well, at its core, Web3 is this super ambitious attempt to fix what a lot of people think is fundamentally broken about the internet right now. You know, the fact that a handful of giant companies control pretty much everything. The promise is to build something more open, more transparent, and more fair.
The technology that supposedly makes all this possible is the blockchain. The easiest way to think about it is like a shared digital record book that's open for everyone to see. And because it's copied and spread out across thousands of computers, no single company or person can control it or change it. This is huge because it means you don't need a middleman like a bank or a big tech company to approve things.
So if you have this shared record book, how do you prove you own something on it? That's where tokens come in. A token is basically just a bit of code that acts like a digital certificate of ownership. And this is a pretty wild idea because it means you can have true, verifiable ownership of things that only exist online. We're talking digital money, digital art, even a vote in an online community.
And this slide really nails the fundamental shift. In Web 2, let's be honest, you are the product. Your data is what platforms sell to make their money. The promise of Web 3 is to completely flip that script. It wants to put you back in the driver's seat, in control of your own data and your own digital life. So when you put all these pieces together, you start to see a picture of a radically different kind of internet. It's one where you own your identity, where artists and creators can get paid directly without a platform taking a huge cut, where you can send money to anyone without needing a bank, and where organizations can be run more democratically by their members.
Now, that all sounds pretty incredible, right? A game changer. But after hearing that amazing pitch, a lot of the folks who are actually building websites and apps today are asking a very simple and very sharp question.
And you know what? It's a totally fair question. The gap between that big, beautiful promise of Web 3 and the reality of it today, well, it's massive. So let's get real and look at the major problems and criticisms that have so many people feeling skeptical. This quote from a developer on Reddit just cuts right to the heart of the user experience problem. Right now, for most things, the decentralized version is just worse. It's slower, it's more expensive, and it's way more confusing to use than the apps we already have. In many ways, it honestly feels like a step backward.
And then there's this massive criticism about who's really in charge. The co-founder of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, basically says Web 3 isn't actually decentralized at all. He argues that instead of giving power back to the people, it's just moving it from big tech companies to a new group of insiders, powerful venture capital firms, and early investors who own most of the valuable tokens.
The technical limits are staggering. I mean, just look at this comparison. A centralized network like Visa can handle something like 24,000 transactions every single second. Ethereum, which is where most Web3 apps are built, can handle maybe 15. That is a performance gap so massive you just can't ignore it. It's not ready for prime time.
And the risk here isn't just theoretical. It's painfully real. In 2024 alone, more than $2 billion was stolen through hacks, scams, and exploits in the Web3 world. And because of the code is law mindset, once that money is gone, it's pretty much gone for good. There's no one to call to get it back.
This chart gives you a glimpse into the new, creative ways criminals are operating here. It's like the Wild West. You have things like flash loan attacks, where someone can borrow millions of dollars with zero collateral for just a few seconds to completely mess with markets. Or rug pulls, which are just brutally simple. A team raises a bunch of money for a project and then, poof, they disappear with all of it. There are very few safety nets for users.
And as if all that wasn't enough, the list of challenges just keeps going. The environmental impact of some blockchains is enormous. The user experience can be a total nightmare if you're not super tech-savvy, and governments all over the world are still trying to figure out the rules, which creates this constant cloud of uncertainty. Okay, so after that long list of very real problems, you might be thinking this whole thing is a lost cause. But, and this is a big but, the story doesn't end there. While the public hype has definitely cooled down, some very serious institutions are quietly looking past all the noise and experimenting with the core technology to solve some actual problems.
Check this out. This is Project Mariana. And this isn't some fly-by-night startup. This is a joint project between the central banks of France, Switzerland, and Singapore. They're using a concept from crypto called automated market makers to see if they can make foreign currency exchange happen instantly, 24/7, without all the old, slow, traditional plumbing.
And this potential isn't just for the big banks. Look at this diagram. It shows a model for something called remittances. That's when people send money back home to their families in other countries. By using these things called stablecoins, which are basically digital dollars or euros, researchers think they could cut the fees people pay by up to 80%. That's a huge deal for millions of families. Over in the US, a group of banks is trying something a little different. They're using a private blockchain, so it's not open to just anyone. This lets them get some of the cool benefits of Web3 tech, like instant programmable money, but they get to do it inside a controlled, regulated environment. That's much safer than the public Wild West. So what this shows is that for these big, serious organizations, adopting this stuff isn't like flipping a switch. It's a slow, careful process. You start with small tests, you figure out if it actually solves a problem better than what you already have. You tackle those huge challenges we talked about, speed, security, usability, and then, finally, you try to plug it into the systems you've been using for decades. So all of this, the utopian promise, the harsh reality, the quiet experiments, it all brings us to the final and really the most important question. Where is this all going? What is the future of the internet actually going to look like? Right now, it feels like we're standing at a fork in the road. One path leads toward that original dream, a more open, user-owned internet. But the other path leads to what the critics are afraid of, a system that just looks decentralized on the outside, but is really just controlled by a new, powerful group of insiders. Centralization 2.0. And that right there is probably the most important thing to take away from all of this. Web3 is not a finished product. It's not some destiny that's already written. It's a collection of powerful ideas and technologies that are being built, fought over, and debated as we speak. It's a massive, high-stakes experiment, and it's happening right now. And so that leaves us with this final question. The whole battle for the next version of the internet, it's not really about technology. It's not about blockchains or tokens. It's about power. Who gets to have it, and who gets to control the future? And the final answer probably won't depend on the code itself, but on the people who build it, the people who fund it, and ultimately the people who decide how it gets used.